They send boxes, John. Boxes of sunglasses.
Hey, man.
You say that like you're complaining. I don't understand. That
Right?
feels like
I mean,
a good problem to have.
sometimes, like, the amount of stuff that, like, oh, we got a no-code, like, this is happening next, so I'm going to be sending you guys a bunch of drinks and stuff. So, like,
Okay.
everybody that comes on gets a case of no-co, so, yeah. And then Garmin
Cool.
is jumping on stuff. But, hi, everybody. This is our episode today. This is going to be great. We're back with John. There's Liv. Everybody doesn't know who Liv is, so I'm gonna give Liv like a platform of like 5 to 10 minutes, explain who she is, where she comes from, and all the great things about herself.
Okay.
And like no pressure.
None,
Yeah.
zero.
Yeah, no pressure. Wow, you want me to take 10 whole minutes? You said 5 or 10. So, I mean,
floor is yours.
Where should we even start? I suppose I'll start. I usually do the real quick spiel from the beginning. I grew up in the Northern Virginia area. I moved 5 times before I turned 7. And then moved. Yeah, that's that whole being a military brat thing. Back in the day, they did not stay in one place for very long. So the Army is getting things right-er. They might not still be right, but they're right-er.
I mean, it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it is.
Step.
We moved to the DC area when I was about 7, and my dad stayed at the Pentagon after that until I went to college. So I got to grow up in the DC area, which was interesting. And we could talk about what that looks like. Everybody's like, oh, you grew up in Northern Virginia. And I'm like, well, yeah, but also like my dad was a major with 5 kids in the 90s. And so it's not right. Exactly. It's not exactly like you think it is.
So many kids.
Yeah, it's a lot of kids on a major salary. In the
starting 5. Starting 5.
Yeah, exactly. So I was homeschooled until I went to college. I was the oldest of 5 kids. I, was raised as the oldest son of 5 kids, and now I'm the oldest daughter. And so that's been interesting. My family was what was at the time probably a fairly stereotypical conservative, kind of conservative bordering on fundamental Christian, Republican military family. And, I think that's kind of the backdrop of my whole story, really. And I don't say that at this point with any judgment or malice. It's just a kind of, here's where I came from. Here is the environment that I grew up in and how my experience got framed, right? And I'll say, like, I have a great relationship with my parents now and with my siblings. And so we've grown and we've changed and we've kind of continued to choose each other. And that was not always a safe place, right? Like, I had a good family life. My parents are still married. I had what many people would consider to be kind of an idyllic growing up, right? Like,
there's no such thing as normal, man.
Yeah, I know. But like,
there's no such thing as normal.
Yeah, but so we're all the same like age. That's what we grew up seeing as successful.
Exactly, right? So, and that matters to my kind of overall story. Anyway, I did get a bunch of socialization. I talk about being homeschooled, but I was, I played soccer in community leagues. Northern Virginia has the country's 2nd largest swim league. So I was a swimmer for, 10 years. And so I did get to spend a lot of time outside my home doing sports and going to church and playing in bands and doing other things. So it wasn't quite your stereotypical homeschool experience. So that's kind of cool. And then, we can talk about all my history, but I kind of knew from a pretty young age that something was up, but I didn't have the language around that, right? Like, that's a funny phrase now to say, but I didn't have the language for it, right? So we didn't have a TV.
Do you think that's because you didn't see someone like you right now in the world? Like, because I frame it as I think that transgender people have had a really rough time, because even if we go back to like when we grew up, because Liv, how old are you? Like 32, 31?
35.
Dang, you got me beat. I'm the youngest person in this room. All right. So, I mean, even going back to the 90s, you didn't see a bunch of transgender people doing things. You didn't see commercials. You didn't see this inclusivity, like the inclusivity that's supposed to be there. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that. That's kind of, I was wondering if that's why kind of.
Well, also, there wasn't really a term that wasn't pejorative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Not that I grew up knowing.
Right. And I think that all of that kind of matters, right? So the big thing there, the kind of broad term that we'd use is representation matters, right? So that's kind of, even if there had been public representation, and I think you're right that really there really just wasn't that much, right? There have been a few more prominent trans people in history, even as far back as World War II, and kind of in recent history, there have been folks, and further back there have some, but those aren't stories that were highlighted, in the 1980s or 1990s, right? That's just not how things were. Yeah. And even if they had been, I didn't have access to that kind of information. We didn't have a TV. Yep. We didn't have the internet.
The internet wasn't a thing.
Right. The internet wasn't a thing. And we didn't have a TV. And so there was, the Washington Post, or I think that's the newspaper we got. And then there was going to the library. But like, what was I going to do? Go to the library and look up like how to be a girl, or I think I'm a girl? Like that doesn't, especially in that kind of family, like that would not have been safe. And I've talked about that with my parents since, and they're like, yeah, that wouldn't have been a good idea for you to be like, hey, I mean, because they wouldn't have known either, honestly. Like that's kind of the deal, is that the representation that wasn't there for me to have the language, but there wasn't any representation for them to have the language, right? Like now you look at, there are numerous groups out there for parents of trans kids, and for kids with trans parents for that matter. Yeah. But when we were growing up, that just didn't exist, maybe at all, and certainly not in the more widespread way that it does now.
Yeah, definitely not in an accessible manner.
Right. Like there were maybe little places in like New York City or San Francisco. Yeah. There were these kind of spaces that maybe that existed, but that wasn't accessible to me. So
like when I was in high school, I spent a lot of time in like the Boys Town district of Chicago.
Right.
Because like one of my best friends was gay, and like that's the only place we could go where he was like, I can feel safe here. So even being exposed to like the LGBT community in like the late 90s, transgender people weren't like a thing that I was ever exposed to in Boys Town.
Right.
In Chicago.
I think the first experience I had with someone that was kind of in the blend or in the transitional period of realizing they weren't a gay man, they were essentially a woman trapped in a man's body, was my cousin Terry on. I didn't understand this then. We would make fun of him, pick on him and stuff because we were children. We didn't know any better. It was the 90s. We didn't fucking know. But now that I look back on it, I feel so bad because now Terriana is Terriana, and she is so happy. Right. She is the happiest individual that I know right now. I'm like, dude, how did that happen? And she was like, well, I finally realized who I was. And I asked her, I was like, so if you could have done it at an earlier age, would you have? And she said no. And this is the reason that she had to me. The reason that she said was that, what if it had been this thing where, I was just simply a gay man and I was just having a rough go at childhood and teenage years. And I was like, that makes sense, but that's not everyone's story. One size doesn't fit all, but I can say that I haven't always been, I guess, as accepting, but I mean, I was a teenager, so I don't really count those years, so to speak, to 10, 9, 12 years old.
Once you grow up, if you start acting like a grown up, like you're cool.
Well, and that's like Kendrick Lamar wrote that song about that very thing. Right. And, there was a lot of controversy about the song because of the language that he used, which is not something that he's a stranger to. But it's that story to some extent. Right. This like, man, we like really, really messed this up when we were kids. Yeah. And I get it now. And I think that's like, I grew up as a presumably straight white, dude in America. Right. Like, I was raised with a certain set of privileges, and I was probably a jackass too.
Do you think part of the reaction people have to you specifically from other people of that group is like, how do you win the lottery and then just fuck it up?
No, oh, what? No, don't. Oh, that
But
hurts my
like,
feelings.
no, but like, hear me out. So if everyone has so much privilege, right? I think Liv is probably one of the more amazing people to be like, no. This is who I am. Like this person over here.
That's a mental health. Like that's just that's a applaud to your parents, I'm assuming, and you seeking out like help and finding help from people. Like you were at some point you went, hey, something's up. How do I figure this out? You found the resources to figure it out, and you were like, okay, this is what's going on. And I think that's why, John, she took the step to kind of go, who am I really?
Please don't. Maybe I misspoke.
I don't know how you.
No,
I'm sorry.
I think, John, to your point, being the people respond potentially. I mean, people generally actually respond pretty well to me, at least to my face. Maybe they don't respond well to me behind my back, but at least to my face, they respond pretty well. But I think to some extent, your question frames one of the central issues around trans people in general, but especially around trans women, is that in America, and to a lesser extent, maybe in the West, but certainly in America, we value masculinity in a way that we do not value femininity, right? It's not even just we value men more than we value women, which is also true. We value masculinity more than femininity.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, we
we got time. You see that clock up there? Dude, I got plenty of time. This is for, I wanted to have you on so you can educate a lot of people on this issue itself. Please do.
I mean, I think it gets to John's point a little bit that there's this sense of straight white men, or presumably straight white men, have had the most power in our country for the longest time.
Because they wrote it that way.
Right, of course. I mean, right, there is this, victory doesn't determine who's right, but who's left.
Yep.
Right. Oh, wow. So there's, right. So there's this, right, that whole, there's a lot of ways to look at this, but it was set up a very specific way to kind of continue to allow the people in power to have the power. And the folks in power have continued to capitalize on that. Pun intended, right? So
good old capitalism.
Right. So I think, but we have valued this sense of masculinity. And I was reading this article before we got on to kind of refresh my whole like trans people in sports deal. But there's this sense of the way the world should be or is supposed to be, and it's like white masculinity and white femininity too, right? So this is not just about gender; it's also about race, right? And we can talk about that, right? But there's this sense. Well, we can dive into that as we go, but we don't have to say everything all at.
You know what? You even sound like an officer now, Liv. I swear to God, you can tell who's been an officer because of the way they speak and the way they go. We're going to get to this course. No, it's fine. I knew it was going to happen. I do it sometimes.
I try not to.
Liv's also at like how to be a super officer training. So
how to be a like qualified officer. I don't know about super officer.
I think
you're a super officer.
The thing that qualifies you to be an officer, I guess, is what people put a lot of like stock in, is like going to ranger school, and I'm like, it's just hazing. Like I survived 60 days of hazing. I don't give a fuck. It sucked. I'm good.
Yeah, it sucks, and like just don't quit, and like just endure the sucking, and like that. I mean, I'm with you.
If you can make it that far, doesn't
prove anything.
Yeah, but if you can do that, it's kind of like college. College isn't really. You don't really learn a whole lot. You learn how to just be organized and suffer through shit. Yeah. 3 degrees later, I can say that is my experience.
Yeah. No. I think that's like you learn how to get along in a certain environment with a certain group of people in a certain way and function in that language, right? Like in that system, you learn things and you learn how to survive in that system. And then you learn how to survive in another system.
But yeah, race lift, do it. Go. That's where you end it.
I mean, I'm the white person here, right? So like I'm not the person who's supposed to be talking about race to some extent.
This is an equal opportunity platform.
So last time we were on, me, Ken, and
Steve.
the other hosts of the show had a deep, in-depth conversation about trans athletes in sports, and all of us are cisgender hetero dudes.
Did you? Yeah. So we need to have that conversation with someone that is living that right.
Yeah, well, that's
that
really
was brought
why
up.
I'm
Like,
here.
hey, you know what?
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
like, Liv. And I was like, wait. And he was like, yeah. He was like, at that point in time, you were like Captain Stellick. And I was like, oh, yeah. She fixed my shoulder. Oh, Major. I said then Cap. Then
I was,
Cap.
yeah, then I was a captain. It's true. It's true. I've only been a major for a little bit. Yeah, I'm a baby major. It's okay. So one of the we'll just dive into trans sports, right? Because that's, I think, kind of where we started this whole deal. I didn't probably say enough about my background to get there, but I, commissioned as an infantry officer way back in the day when women couldn't be infantry officers, and I didn't look like this. And then I was an infantry PL and staff officer, and then decided to go to physical therapy school, became a physical therapist, all while in the Army, and then came out in 2016 when the policy changed that allowed me to come out and transition and publicly be myself and still stay in the Army. So that's kind of how things went. That's how I got where I am. Things have gone actually surprisingly well. And that's kind of what brings us here. And really, the first time John and I had a conversation about trans athletes in sports was when we were in Afghanistan. And there was a competition, we did our 1,000-pound club competition, as happens on deployments. And
as you do when you have nothing else to
right,
do.
Yeah.
Between options, like, let's go lift heavy things.
Right. And I showed up on, I was doing my battlefield circulation and happened to be at, at the FOB that you guys were at the right time and place. And I was like, all of a sudden realized, this could be uncomfortable for everyone. Right. There's this sense of
keep talking. I'm going to grab something real quick.
Yeah. I've been training for a long time and I'm pretty strong. I'm not as strong as I would like to be, but I'm pretty strong.
I mean, who is?
Right, exactly. But there was this sense of looking at the other women who are going to compete. It seemed fairly clear to me that I had a lot more experience and would likely outperform them. And that I wanted my participation to be a good thing and not a bad thing. For me and for them and for the unit, really, right? That was kind of all of those pieces were relevant to me. And I remember being really nervous. I talked to my friend Sarah, who traveled with me, and I was like, "What do you think?" And she was like, "I think it's fine." Captain, right? Yeah. And so, and then I think we chatted about it briefly too, that like, hey, is this okay?
Yeah, I think actually the only issue I had is you tried to squat in your uniform pants, and I was like, you have to have shorts because I have to see your hip crease.
Yeah.
That was the only.
Well, and I wanted to do front squats because I wasn't a back squatter.
You were like, can I do front squats? I was like,
you like front? Wait, we're gonna pause right there. Why do you like front squats more than back squats?
Because front squats are dope and back squats suck. I don't know.
That's
I just I like front squats. I'm not a good squatter. I'm a pretty good front squatter.
I watched your video on Instagram. You're a pretty good squatter, Liv. Stop.
I'm getting to be a better squatter because I hired a really good coach, because John was like, hey, maybe stop trying to do this all by yourself and hire somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. And then I did, and Stacy's dope, and she's actually helping.
The freaking best. I love her.
Yeah, she is the best, right? So, and in more ways than just being a coach and just my lifting life, she's been a super lovely human. But at the time, I was probably actually a stronger front squatter than back squatter. I don't remember what I back squatted, but I think at the time I was front squatting like 255 or something stupid.
Yeah, I think your back squat was like 240 something.
And your front squat was hard.
So here's that whole event from my perspective, right? So like we can flip this camera around right now. So I had been running the 1,000-pound club basically since I got there, because I was pretty much the only meathead that knew how to efficiently do that. So our first
Jesus.
sergeant, James Campbell, came to me. He was like, "Hey, can you like monitor and like run this?" I was like, "Sure." So we just made it like a monthly thing.
Yeah.
And then I met you actually when you rotated through. Someone's like, "Hey, the PT's here," and I had just like super borked my hip.
Yep.
And like I like limped in, like came to see Liv, and she like did her thingy thing, and then told me like we had a talk. She was like, "So if you need to give this rest," I'm like, "We both know I'm not going to do that, but what can I do to keep working?" And she was like, "Okay," and gave me a bunch of like external rotation hip stuff, which I did. So I was aware of who you were, and I'd seen you
Yeah.
at the gym because like we basically just all lived there.
Yeah.
And I
That's
knew
the
she was really strong. So when you showed up, people were like, "Hey, you know that Catson's here," and I'm like, "Awesome, cool." And then like we had a talk, and like I forced you to put on some PT shorts. I don't know where you found them. I assumed you borrowed them from somebody.
Yeah, probably.
But then came back and did the thing, and everyone was like, "Well, she took all the records," because what I used to do is I would post the
Yeah.
male and the female records,
Yeah.
and they're like, "She has all the records," and I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, isn't that fucked up?" I'm like, "That's not fucked up at all." But people being people started getting like feather ruffly. And by the way, I would like to also add, none of the people that had a problem with it were any of the women that competed at all. Right? There was this SFAB Sergeant First Class that was really strong, and she saw how much you benched, and she's like, "Okay, I can beat that," and just like went right back to training. But because people are people, I just put the top 3 of each, and that was how I handled that.
Yeah.
And everything was cool. And some people told me they thought it was messed up, and I told them I don't give a single fuck what they think.
Okay, so what is that? The thing is, the reason why it's not fucked up, one of the main reasons is that it's just a thing for fun. It's for fun. It's to build camaraderie, number one. Like that's why you did that thing, right? You didn't do it to go, "Oh, I'm gonna make some money off of this." There's no money. There's no scholarships tied. There's nothing tied to this thing except for your own mental health and enjoyment.
Yes, that is. I like that, and I want to come back to that with something to say no to. But
Go ahead.
the
No, no,
piece
no,
that
no.
I
Go ahead.
the thing that I think is really important about that is that so much of the conversation and so much of the legislation, the anti-trans legislation that has happened in the country over the last year or two, is aimed precisely at populations where it is all for fun, right? It's at grade school, junior high, and potentially high school kids, where we're trying to legislate away trans people, where it is precisely that, right? It's for fun. It's for mental well-being. It's for folks to learn, for
team
kids
building,
to,
belonging, like
right.
all the stuff you need for high school to suck like a little less.
Yeah, to challenge your body, to inhabit your own body, to figure that stuff out. Like, how do I live in this body, right? And that's not just for trans people, right? That's for all of us to figure out how to live in our own bodies. Because
but like no one else has laws preventing them from doing that.
Right, exactly. So that's, I think, absolutely that matters to say that most of the legislation that is happening is really aimed at kids who don't give a fuck about who's playing with them, right? Like, and B, it's just fun. Right? That's all kids sports is supposed to be and needs to be, is fun. Yeah, we want it to be competitive in the sense of like it's a competition, right? To build some of that drive, but it's not competitive in a way that is, like you said, money or scholarship. And even then there's
no FIFA scouts at your little league soccer.
Yeah.
Like calm down.
I agree with all that. Like, where does it become an issue of like, okay, these kids are swimming in high school and they're competing for scholarships, things like that. Does that draw a line for you, or do you think there should be some type of rule changes or updates, anything, what have you?
So I'll tell you my position, which has changed from the beginning of my transition to now. And I have become probably less tolerant of what I consider to be nonsense. And basically what I think is that we should let people be people, right? Like if I am who I say I am, then like I should be able to compete in the league that I should be in. That's kind of my flat statement about that. Is like, that's what I believe deeply, like, as the world in its ideal form, that's what would happen, is we would just be like, okay, cool, that's who you are, awesome, welcome. And I recognize that that isn't always going to happen, and potentially there are situations where that wouldn't be equitable.
What situation would that be?
Well, we'll talk a little bit about that. I want to be really careful not to say the word fair, because sports
fair is not real.
Are inherently unfair, right? So we can talk about, and here's where I think that I have where I have come to that place of, I just get to say who I am, and that's where I get to compete, because there are other people who have what we might consider advantages, or disadvantages, right? That we don't police. For example, Carrie Walsh Jennings is 11 inches taller than the average woman in America. 11 inches.
Yeah, she's a whole foot.
Right. She's a whole foot taller than the average woman in America. And, maybe that's an advantage to her professional Olympic volleyball career.
Maybe.
Right? It's possible. I'm not saying that defines her success, because I don't believe that. But it's hard to argue that that's not an advantage that she has, and we don't police that.
Yeah.
Do you believe that, also the same line of like a question, do you believe that, and I'm just asking you these things to get your opinion out there, we're just forming a baseline, but do you believe that there are some sports that shouldn't like allow transition athletes to be in?
No.
Like none of them? Okay.
No, I don't think so. I think that there are ways to, really, I think you have to kind of separate. College is the sticky place. I think, high school and below, I think are a separate system. I think we can talk about that in a way that we can talk about kind of post-collegiate athletes. Are another system. College is a little bit of a sticky ground, I think, to me personally. And again, one of the things
it is too. It's just they need to clarify, like, my issue would be that they say a female or woman needs to have like so many nanomoles per deciliter of testosterone for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What is the average for like an average woman? But these athletes that compete, these women are not average women.
Right.
What is the average of all these?
That's the point that I made last time.
Yeah, that's the point that I was trying to back you up on, John, because Steve was like, no. But I'm like, I love Steve. We're really good friends. We can agree to disagree. We're still going to be friends. But my issue is that I think it is, is it Carrie Pierce who did their labs and publicized them? One of the major CrossFit female athletes publicized, and she was like 20 or 30 nanomoles over the female average. And guess what? She was really strong. She's a cisgender woman. Yeah. So what I believe should happen is that there should be essentially a draw from all the female competitors of each sport. All right, what is the average, nanomoles per deciliter of testosterone in your body? Okay, cool. All right, this is what the average is. You need to be at or right within so many plus or minus so many, nanomoles per deciliter of testosterone, because it does provide a certain advantage, especially in recovery. I can say that for a fact. It does.
So most people who have had testosterone running through their body in a significant way would say that it confers some kind of recovery advantage. Mm-hmm. What it doesn't do, from what we can tell from all of the data, is that there's no compelling data that says that having higher testosterone makes you stronger, faster, or a better athlete in any way. There's just not data to support that.
There's one study that I saw. It came out like 2.5-3 weeks ago. I can't remember who did it. I have it saved in my file somewhere. But it was about testosterone and VO2 max uptake, and it was pretty significant with the amount. So they had a population size of 19 transgender athletes that were male to female. Then they had a group of collegiate level athlete, cisgender females. And then they had the average cisgender female, and they had them go through the same workout regimen. I think it was for 4 to 5 months, and they kind of proved a statistical regression. Is a fancy way of saying correlation. This is just correlation, not causation. So this paper is just putting out an idea of what could be associated with another thing, and it's the increased amount of testosterone kept on the same linear track as VO2 max. And that only applies for endurance sports, because you really only need a good VO2 max for endurance sports.
Well, and again, can we prove or show that a higher VO2 max makes you a better athlete?
Oh no, there's 6 inches between your ears that is a huge difference maker. Yeah.
And so I think do we think that there is possibly an advantage conferred by having had increased testosterone? Or folks think that, and maybe that's true. Maybe there are some things physiologically that happen that we think are markers of possible increased performance, right? But they're not such that it is they're not definitive, and they're not overwhelming, right? So there isn't something to say that we look at across the range of athletes, all of the best ones have increased testosterone compared to all of the worst ones, or at the elite level, right? The top 0.01% have high testosterone, and the body, or the top point, the 0.09 below that.
The right part of the bell curve.
Right. Outliers. Just basically outliers.
Right. And what we see when we look at the data is that those things aren't true. That at that level of sport, having a higher level of testosterone doesn't necessarily make you the best. There are folks, right? So there are cisgender men who have testosterone that is too low to be considered male.
Yeah.
Right? It's below the normal masculine range, who are elite level athletes.
I'm going to show you something that supports what you're saying, Liv. And this is one of the papers I looked at a while ago. And I'll just highlight this one line for you.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Yeah.
So in my sport, right, powerlifting specifically, if having higher testosterone is what gave you the advantage, then the sport would devolve directly into who can do the most testosterone. Right?
Yeah.
So it is a help, but like, you don't know what. So I've been on TRT for a while now, right? And I know what my dosage does to me. But if we were to give that to you, Ken, there's no idea what would happen, because everyone responds to different levels of testosterone.
So I can tell you what happens to me, because I had to take it when right before I got out of the Army, Liv, like I think it was like a year after you had left, I had went into a sickle cell crisis again. Because I had a couple of those, and then I had another crisis, and I was crippled. Like, I couldn't move. I couldn't walk for like 4 or 5 days. I walked myself into the doctor, and I was like, something has to change. I can't breathe.
Yeah.
We go in there, and they give me testosterone inhibitors. So basically what that is just essentially you go and get Nugenics off the shelf. It's just a testosterone uptake pill. I took that, and I got lumps all over my body. It didn't do shit for me. It just gave me nodules across like my elbow and my neck, and basically my lymphatic system was getting pissed that I was trying to increase my testosterone. Come to find out, stupid Army doctors, not you, Liv, they didn't run a thorough blood panel on my testosterone count. I think I'm sitting at like 790 to 801 on any given day when I'm not doing anything. But when I do compete and do things afterwards, it's close to almost 1,000s. It's egregious. It's crazy.
So before I started a certain training regimen, I had a very in-depth physical, right?
Yeah.
And at the age of 26, my natural testosterone was over 1,000.
That's crazy.
But it also explains why I was who I was and where I was, and why I was where I was. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I was able to do the things that I did, because my natural testosterone was high, but that's how I responded to that. Versus if the secret was, let's raise everyone's testosterone up, like the Army would have already done that.
Yeah. So I think here's another take on that, or another story to kind of illustrate the same point, that before I transitioned, my labs got pulled and my testosterone was over 900. And now I think it is at 11, 16, 14, the last time I checked, right? And, later this week will be my first, or my max deadlift attempt for this cycle, right? But like,
what are you aiming for?
We'll see. I don't know.
What was your last heaviest?
I can't remember. I think I did 345 for 3 singles last week.
Nice.
I think, or 2 weeks ago. Last week was actually rack pulls, and I did a 400-pound rack pull, so that felt pretty good.
I had block pulls,
nice.
And I got up. I think it was like 290 kilos, which is just awesome for me that my back is recovering that much.
Oh, we're talking about deadlifts. I got something to show you guys.
That's exciting. But like, I've bench pressed more, right? So I did 2 singles at 220 today. And last week I did 205 for 4, right? That is the most that I've bench pressed. I did 225 like a couple months ago, but I don't remember having bench pressed 225 before in my life. Maybe I did when I was a young infantry officer. We didn't do a lot of bench pressing. We did a whole lot of squatting. But the point of that is to say that, the point of that is to say,
keep going, I'm listening. Yep.
I have the lowest testosterone I've ever had in my body, and have had, really low, right? And I'm the strongest that I've ever been, because I'm training harder, right?
True.
And so I think that we have this idea that testosterone is the thing. The thing isn't testosterone. The thing is nutrition and training and coaching and programming and my access to those things.
Also, most of the people that popped this year for the games, the CrossFit games, it wasn't testosterone. One dude, testosterone. No, 2. A 65-year-old that was on TRT, and he thought it was okay, which they need to change the rule on that, because 65 plus need fucking TRT because they're at a deficit. And then you have this one guy named Phil Toon who tried to mask it with finasteride. Everybody else was Anavar.
So
it's not
Anavar
testosterone.
is still just raises your testosterone. Like, that's how it functions.
Yeah, but it's not like, and then SARMs, and SARMs too. SARMs isn't even.
I love watching people get busted for SARMs, man.
It's so
easy. That's like getting detention for having a candy cigarette.
Yeah, like, you can do better. But go ahead, Liv. Sorry, didn't mean to stop you.
No, just to say that like, having testosterone for me wasn't that significant, right? Like, I think my max deadlift back then when I was 22, I think, was, so there's just some age related change there, was, I think over.
Well, because everyone knows, like, your back gets stronger as you get older, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, everything just works better back here as I age.
Sounds like
but you to some extent, you do get stronger with age, right? Like, my ability to do heavy squats day in and day out is going to change, right? Like, I can't train heavy squats every single day like I did when I was a young infantry officer. But my end strength is actually higher than it was, or close to as high as it was 15 years ago, right? Or 10 years ago. And so I think, given that I've been off of testosterone for 5 years or whatever, there's this, and I've been at 10, 16, 14. I can't remember what my last labs were, because I don't check them as often as I should. But
which is super, like, I mean, that's such an awesome point, because, like, my meathead brain right now is like,
right,
how?
Right, because we have this idea that testosterone is what allows you to lift weights. And testosterone is not what allows you to lift weights.
No,
your
like,
brain is what allows you to lift weights.
I could be on testosterone all I wanted to and never picked up a barbell before, and then tried and break myself and never get anywhere. Like, that is completely plausible. Yeah, that is plausible. And in saying that, Gabrielle McClellan goes to my gym over here. John met her Saturday, I think it was.
She is
freakishly strong. She's pound for pound, she's just as strong as I am. Because my deadlift is strong, man. My deadlift's 689. Hers is, watch this.
Boop.
That was last year. Watch this.
Yeah, that's right. She said she's just racking them out.
Okay. Right. Again, like, how many people in the world, period, can do what she's doing there?
How many people in the world, period, can do what she's doing once? She does it like 10 times.
There's a guy in the gym that can't do that, and I was talking to him about it the other day. He was like, Gabby freaking went for 400 for 10 reps, and he was like, I've never picked up that much weight. I'm like, what the fuck? What? Really? That's me, though. That I'm just...
Dude, when people start doing the chick stronger than you, I'm like, let me tell you about Leah Reichman. This woman has a 950-pound squat. Multiply.
I'm not doing that.
Multiply, but like, here's the thing though. Like, so that whole, I think Liv and I were talking about this, that whole like genetically men are just that much better, you know, at end strength stuff. That gap is not as big as we think it is at all.
No. There may be fewer people, right? There may be fewer women who can squat that much. But then you have to have the conversation about why. Is it genetics, or is it the fact that we want women to look
to be small, take up less space?
Yeah.
Right.
And so if we made everybody play contact sports in the same league, right, as you were growing up, if we said it would be good for everybody to be strong, if we taught everybody to lift weights at a young age and they lifted growing up, how many more women do you think that we would have who could do a pull-up, or who could...
Yeah, that blows my mind. Holy shit.
Right.
I'm glad you said that.
Well, really the Army saw this, right? So the Army saw this change with the ACFT, right? And I will admit to being a huge ACFT fan, a huge nerd for the ACFT. Obviously, the rollout was a struggle, and there's lots of things to talk about there.
Change that size is going to be...
Of course, it's going to take a huge deal of effort, and I think there's a lot to talk about there.
I'm a big fan of the idea behind it as well.
Well, and you watched people... So they did some cool work looking at folks who came into basic training, and the event that women failed more than anything else was the leg tuck, right? Mm-hmm. And then what people don't talk about is we went from a 60% pass rate with a class in basic training to like a 95% pass rate on that event.
You just have to do one.
Right, but how many women have never done a pull-up or have never done that? And then we trained them for 16 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it is. And holy shit, if you train something, you can do it. Like, how about that?
Well, but also, like, women, like, societally, I see it, are conditioned to, like, not want to be strong.
Right.
Like, the period when men are like, go to the gym, get strong, is that adolescent period when everything shoved towards women is like, be small, take up less space,
put on
don't
a
ever
dress,
disagree,
go learn
the Little Mermaid, just don't say anything and men will like you. Like, all of that stuff is what you're bombarded with, and we're bombarded with like Macho Man Randy Savage and Slim Jims and stuff.
I've dated some pretty strong ladies that could beat my ass.
Right.
Trust me.
Well, that's and my little brother, he's 22, and he's like, all of my peers are like, I don't understand why you like strong girls. And he's like, I don't understand why you wouldn't
understand how you like weak women.
Because they can fight back. When that mugger comes in the alley, I'm like, sweetheart, protect me, Jesus. And I'm gonna run. I'm gonna tuck my head under those covers.
How problematic the statement of I don't like weak women, or I like weak women, like,
right,
that man,
right.
Like,
and here's right.
Say that out loud before, like, that's your preference, man.
My lady just said she wanted to go learn to do jiu-jitsu. I was like, I know a whole bunch of jiu-jitsu coaches here. Fuck yeah, let's go. I'll go with you. And she was like, yeah, you should.
I think
mine's just an elite level rugby player. I don't have to worry about her.
Yeah, I think that's to me the thing, though, is that there are so many layers of privilege or advantage or whatever else that contribute to to sports at the elite level, that have nothing to do with the sex I was assigned at birth.
Correct.
Or the sex anyone else was assigned at birth. Right.
That is to say, I understand the evidence in your argument, and that is to say, so if we put the Los Angeles Lakers against the Spark, the female version of the LA Lakers, who would win? And then the reasoning you just gave me, that you just gave, makes sense. It does make sense. also there is another part that goes, genetics plays a big key in that. Like, I am just a very strong black guy. Granted, I did train for certain things, but because of what happened to my people and selective inbreeding, this is what you get. Like, this is what happens. Like, I can't change that. Like, what do you want? I'm just saying, like, I come from a long line of plapolin motherfuckers.
Yeah, hey, man.
Right. No, for sure.
Yeah,
That's
like, I can
that's
walk
a
up
real thing.
Yeah, my 5x5 on my back squat is 515 pounds.
Well, and then if people get like mad at you for like, well, that's just because you have higher bone density and greater tensile strength in your muscles, be like,
dude,
who did that?
Somebody said, oh shit, no, this is funny. I was at Pensacola Beach Bass a year and a half ago. Someone went, we know why you're strong. And I went, what is that supposed to mean?
He was like, really hard?
He was like, because, and then he stopped and stuttered. I was like, it's because I trained. That's it. That's all I said. And I walked away and I was like, Jesus Christ. And then my friend was there. He's black too. He was like, what the fuck was that? And I'm like, we got to get the fuck out of the South, man. We got to leave. We got to Colorado.
Well, and there, but you're also right? Like you are the product of how you were bred, right? Like of years and years and generations of
breeding, man.
Selective breeding. Like, they want the strongest slaves. Who am I to complain? Now I have traps like, I don't know, Trap Jesus. I don't know.
Right? Exactly. And
John, I love you, man.
And should we now say, well, you have an unfair advantage? Like,
I see
you have some genetics that I don't have.
I genuinely do. Live, Jesus Christ.
Right?
I saw you squatting on your Instagram. You're pretty strong. Your knees don't collapse.
Yeah, but
Thank God. Many females have that problem. Valgus collapsing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, as a PT at valgus collapse, I start to get twitchy, so I can't even go there.
Oh, what? Okay, go ahead. We're gonna do this. Let's do it now. This is good.
Drop
everybody needs to work their hip stability, right? Like, that's a whole thing. Yes. And get a good coach and train, right? There's this whole theme here through, like, there isn't anybody out there who got to be amazing without training, right? Like, they just didn't. Maybe there are some folks out there. I think there are some stories about, I can't remember the guy who held the world record deadlift for a while, who talked about, like, the first time he walked in the gym and deadlifted, he worked up to like 500 pounds or something. And like, there are some people who are freaks of nature. You look at Dmitry Klokov.
Exactly.
Right? Like, there are people, right? There are people who are special. And like, should we say you don't get to compete because you're clearly more gifted than the rest of us? Like, no, the whole point of this is to showcase the folks who are the best. And like, just because I got born into a different body,
to be their absolute best.
Yeah.
In sport, like, that's the whole point, right?
Right.
Like, no one shows up on meet day and is like, I want to give about 80% of what I got today.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, that doesn't happen at all.
I don't. So this is where I kind of lay on the whole issue. I want people to be happy. I want people to just do what they want to do, be happy. I don't care. Like, I don't care. I want to see you be a good person. That's it, baseline bottom. And I see where some people go in the fear escape of, oh, what if, we have all these, men that transition to women and they break the female league. I can understand where your fears are at with that. But the only reason that I understand that fear is when there's tangibles involved, like a free education, getting paid out money, things of that nature. That's where I kind of go, well,
how many trans athletes going for college, going for those freaking rides, do you think there are?
No. I'm not saying I think there's a lot of them. I'm just saying it as time goes on.
You know what? Time out, Ken.
Yeah.
We're doing the same thing we did last time. I'm sorry, Liv.
Go ahead.
No, I'll share something, which is that that is this classic argument that, oh, people are going to transition to get something, right? Like, I am going to do this to get something.
Oh, no. That's not what I meant. I just want to say that's not what I meant. What I meant.
No. I know that's not what you're saying, but you're stating that folks have made that argument, right? That that people are going to transition to gain something from it.
There are bad eggs in every bunch, though. I do
Sure,
see that.
but we're not going to talk about the folks who are actually out there trying to do something malicious, because that's
they are
not
outliers.
most
Those people
people.
are criminals, and they would be criminal
Yeah.
douchebags
Yeah.
anyway.
From my understanding, from what I've experienced and people I know, like those people are few and far between.
Right, cisgender or transgender. Here's
Yeah.
that specific idea, though, of people are going to transition to get something, right? So people have said to me, oh, people just joined the army so they could get
Free
healthcare for
college.
transition.
Or that.
I'm
Yeah.
like, have you, what?
Oh.
Right? Like, the idea is comical. And I thought that was the most egregious thing out there. And then
I fought
and then I did
for-
a training.
yeah.
I did a training for the Bureau of Prisons. And do you want to know what the question the psychologist asks was? They were like, how do we talk to people that tell us that people committed crimes to get them into a federal prison so that they could get trans health care?
Okay. Yep.
Because
Pause.
that is the comment that, right? So that is the logic,
fucked.
right? Because at that, you can, when you take it, that is the argument that people make, regardless of what the thing is. They're like, oh yeah, trans people just committed a federal crime to get into federal prison to get health care. Like, do you not know that working for Starbucks part-time entitles you
Right?
to
healthcare,
full health care?
as long as you get full-time employee, you pay
Part-time.
Yeah.
It's part-time.
It's part-time
For Starbucks. I'm pretty sure it's part-time.
Oh, it's part-time for Costco too. I forgot that.
Right?
Yeah.
Part-time. And it covers trans healthcare. Ain't
And you
nobody
get paid.
joining the army to get trans healthcare. And nobody committing crimes to go to federal prison to get healthcare.
For prison healthcare. Like, imagine thinking that is a viable reason for
And
prison
nobody's
healthcare.
transitioning to get a scholarship.
I'm gonna say this because it happened to one of my soldiers, Jay Padilla. He, now formerly she, was in my unit in Korea. We had a first sergeant. I'm gonna say his name because he's a fucking piece of shit. First Sergeant Hansen. And at that point in time, he now was going through like the whole transition part where we were taking her to mental health. She's depressed. She feels suicidal. And I'm like, I sit her down because I'm literally her first line like leader at that point in time. I was like, hey, what's going on? Sit down and talk to me. And I took her out to dinner, sat down, we talked about it, and she explained it all. And I went, holy shit, we need to get you the help that you need. Like, how do we get this through? Like, how do we get this figured out? And this was 2016. And it was just becoming a thing where everyone was going, we should support this thing. So it had just recently became, kind of into law, essentially, for service members. And she was like, I just need the first sergeant to sign this paperwork and a commander, and I'm good. Like, that's how deep it was, John. It was bad. I had forgotten about this because it'd been long ago, and he's doing great now. We always talk. But yeah, I go to the first sergeant's office. I hand him the papers. I hand the platoon sergeant, the warrant officers in charge of our platoon, because we were in a flight company.
Yeah.
Went, hey, Specialist Padilla wants to do this. She wants to have transition surgery, and it's allowed by the Army. The Army covers it. We just need you to approve it. And we all looked at each other like, why do they need to approve it anyways? Like, he'll just sign it. They kick us out of the room. First sergeant goes through the door. He goes, I'm not fucking signing that. And then the commander's like, why, first sergeant? Why don't you want to, like, regardless, the first sergeant wasn't the approving authority, but the commander gave him, the respect. He was like, why don't you want this to happen? First sergeant Hansen went, I think that she just got in to get a free surgery. I stopped. John, I shit you not. I was at E5 at the time. I opened the door and I was like, first sergeant, that's fucking bullshit, first of all. We just had a 4-hour conversation. I had a 4-hour conversation with her over dinner this weekend and got to know everything about this, this young lady's life.
Dude,
and
you don't even have to be like, you don't even have to know the person. Imagine having to go as a full-grown adult. And again, I'm speaking for you, Liv. I'm sorry, but this makes me mad. So imagine being okay as a full-grown adult, having to go to 2 other adults and asking for the privilege of being treated like everybody else.
No, like, not a privilege. The right.
What makes me mad about this whole particular thing?
The right to be treated like everyone else. Because at the end of the day, when we go to Afghanistan, when we went to Afghanistan, et cetera, Liv might go again. They're killing you because you wear a uniform. They don't give a shit if you're black, Chinese, Native American, man, woman, transition, non-bi. They don't give a fuck.
I'd like to think they didn't shoot at me because I'm too slow of a target.
I mean, but
that has nothing to do with being Chinese.
But you're a hell of a silhouette, though, John.
I know, right? If I just kind of grab my elbows,
25 meter right there. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I don't know if you went through the same experience, Liv. If you did, I'd like to apologize, on behalf of whomever.
No,
if
I had a pretty good experience.
Yeah, but it used to be like that in the first stages in 2016, and you would have to get permission from your first
line.
line.
It is still, you still do have to get permission. So I want to say one thing real quick is I don't know if your friend is publicly out, like in a way. Okay, like okay, as long as like they're good with.
I told him we were going to talk about him today.
So okay, perfect. Cool. I was just like,
yeah.
I figured I just like that's my due diligence. But yeah, I mean, I am still advocating and working towards how do we break apart the medical piece from command, because this shouldn't have anything to do with each other, right? I should be able to get the medical care I need without command getting involved in any way other than the way that they get involved with everything else, which is to say that if I'm going to have a surgery, I need to tell you because I need con leave, and B, it might impact the mission, and so I need to discuss it with you about timing.
Yeah, it would
but
be
everything
a when,
else,
though, not a cannot.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else, and one of the reasons, or I attribute my transition process going well to the fact that I was an officer, I worked in a hospital, had a doctoral degree, I'm white, I have a Ranger tab, I have my fucking airborne wings and air assault wings and blah, blah. Like I walk into a room.
You did all the things and everyone
and the
wants
door
to
is open already.
The door's open. I got all of this shit on my chest. And like, I did not understand fully until going through transition. And this is embarrassing now for me as a human who is growing, but like, I didn't understand the whole racism piece. Like I did not understand that being white granted me a bunch of privilege in the world.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like, obviously now I'm like, fuck, how did I not know this? Right. But I've grown and I've learned and I've listened and like, and now I can look back and be like, oh shit. Like one of the reasons that this went so well is like, has to do with the color of my skin.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
really
and now I can use that to say, when we were in Afghanistan, I had a battalion commander be like, yeah, we're over the hump on racism. And I was like,
fuck?
It's like, you could have heard it. This was an LPD with all the officers.
Oh,
and you could have heard a pin drop. And then I was like, hey, sir, what does that mean?
I'm out, dog. I'm out. I'm just leaving.
Right.
I'm just gonna leave.
Well, so nobody got up and left, but I asked what it meant. And like the room went dead. Like everybody's just like, oh shit, she called him.
What does winning against racism look like?
Yeah, what is
over
that
the hump?
What is your end state?
What does over the fucking hump look? God damn it!
Right,
like,
right.
So
he followed this with, well, what I really mean, what happened was he realized he had done fucked up, as we say. But what he said was, well, I think that like everybody thinks that black people should be allowed to be in the army now.
What the fuck is that supposed to mean? That's worse. That's
right. I was like, you didn't make it better. You didn't make it better.
Just shutting the fuck up would make it so much better.
So he came to find me like afterwards, like a day or two later. He was like, can we talk? And I was like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, I think I fucked up. And I was like, yeah, for sure. For sure. You did. That happened.
I think I fucked up.
I would be more interested to be like, but just for the sake of the conversation, how do you think specifically you fucked up?
Well, so we had a conversation about it, and he's like, well, I feel like I should apologize. And I was like, you don't need to come apologize to me.
You apologize to all the other black people out there.
Right. You need to go find the 3 black officers in your battalion that you said that in front of and apologize to them, and then ask them about their experience.
Yeah.
Ask them what it is like to be a black officer in the United States Army, and then ask them what it is like for their soldiers who are black NCOs, right? Because those black NCOs and those black junior enlisted soldiers, they look up to, and they ask those folks, how do you survive in this organization? Because you get treated differently.
Yeah. Or they go, how do I become like you? How do I become a success story like you? Like, remember yeah, in 1st Brigade, like I started out as a fucking E3 in the Army, and then I became a captain when I got out. Like, how the fuck did I do that? Like, statistically, I was bound to fail. Number 2, like you, people don't understand what it's like being when I was in First Brigade with you guys. There was me, Frank Tidwell, who's another
Frankie
black. Yeah,
T.
Frankie
Yep.
fucking T. I love that man. Him, Conde got there before all of us, but he got pushed forward. And there was a Kimmo. There was 4
Yeah.
black officers. There was 4
Yep.
of us. And then Major Neary came along, made it 5. And
Yep.
we were like, we all would get together and go, how do we navigate all this? And Major Neary was like, the command did not know about these conversations we had. We would sit down and go to lunch every Thursday, and we would go,
Yeah.
hey, what are some issues you see? How do we fix this stuff? How do we motivate our non-white soldiers to do more, be more,
So
feel welcome?
That was required because I'm not going to name names,
Yeah.
but I was in a certain non-white brigade commander's office.
Oh shit!
With a very white XO and a very white S3.
Liv, this sounds familiar. You know what this is.
And a very white. Yep. A not white sergeant major. So it was like me and the sergeant major and the colonel.
Fucking
and then
Delphin.
These 2, they were Ranger Tab, all the pipe hitter badges, what you want
about. Oh god.
in an infantry officer, right? They did the stuff. And then there was a time in the Army when there had to be a brief on racism and white extremism given at the brigade level to all officers. Mm-hmm. And the conversation in that room went, I'm not going to name names from here on or who said what, but I will leave you to fill in who said what. Someone said, do you think this is really a problem in our brigade?
Fucking Mary. I can't. Okay.
Someone else, shut up. Yep. Someone else said, well, sir, I've been in the Army for 13 years and I've operated in some of the toughest units the Army has, and I've never seen it. I don't think it's a thing. At which point because I can name myself, said, fucking what? Direct quote. And everyone stopped and looked at me. And it's like, okay, minus this part, I generally do not present as an Asian person. I've gotten that my entire life. They're like, wow, you don't look like a Wong. Oh, we imagined someone else, right? But
so
because of that,
right, and that's so fucked up.
Exactly.
You need fucking shrimp fried rice in your hand or some shit. God damn it!
Because of that, every unit I've ever been in, there has been racism against me. And not even individual racism, institutionalized. Remember, was it the old EO training? Yeah. Everyone's EO officer started the brief with, guys, I don't care if you're black, white, red, green, orange, purple, or yellow.
Fucked up.
In the Army, you're green. Don't lump me in with green and purple. Yellow is a people.
Yellow is a people. It's a derogatory term for people. Some people.
Every quarter, I would hear that.
Yeah.
And then every unit. So these people, up at the officer level, are insulated. And I don't think they were bad people. I definitely don't think they were racist people. But it's not something that ever comes to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. We don't know.
I would argue that to some extent they were racist, right? I think to some extent I think
they
that
weren't
you can
actively racist. They were racist in that they didn't know that they didn't know it.
Yes, they weren't racist on purpose.
Yes,
they just weren't anti-racist.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
There we go. That's good enough. Yes, ma'am.
Right, because it's not enough to be neutral. That's the thing. You can't just be like, right? You can't just be neutral.
But I don't want to be told to pick a side. But there is a right side and a wrong side. But I'm talking on softer things. Softer. If you're talking about, oh, you need to be a racist or not, I'm just not a fucking racist. I'm not going to do that. No.
But it's not enough to just not be racist. That's how all of the horrible stuff in America has gone over. It's not me.
Bystander mentality. Yeah, we talked about this in my psych class. You're just, you're just standing there watching something bad happen. You're not going to do anything about it.
Right.
Do something. Yeah. Silence is being complicit. But I don't understand, speaking of the whole race thing, after all these meetings and all these things, two of us, two of us end up making captain, going somewhere. Major Neary's now going to be Lieutenant Colonel Neary because he made the like colonel
Hell
list.
yeah.
And that man's fucking awesome. I love him.
Yeah.
And me, I'm out. I have a really good job.
Yeah.
My life is pretty nice. I get to sit down and have conversations like this all the time and work out. I mean, can't ask for anything more. I
Pretty good
chalk
life,
that up
yeah.
to I chalk it up to having good mentors, and I think that at the end of the day, be you transgender, non-binary, just gay, whatever you are, find somebody that's been there and went down that road and found a mentor. Like talk to somebody, talk to a person. I know that Jay, he didn't talk to anybody, and I just so happened to one day go, "Hey, why are you not eating with everybody else? What's going on?"
Yeah.
And then there it goes. Everything came out, and I was like, I don't know everything about this issue. Do you have like, is there a resource? Like, I didn't know anything. I was like, is there a resource?
Yeah.
Is there somebody else in this brigade that has went through this? Sure as shit, there was one. And I linked them up. They started
Yeah.
having conversations, and that changed everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's a completely foreign idea to people to not have the ability to reach out to someone and ask for help on something like that.
Yeah.
Because like I can go ask Liv help about like, hey, I broke my shoulder again, right? Zero fear of reprisal because I'm like, hey, I'm a human and that. But if there was something that I didn't necessarily want to share with people, how do you Liv? How do you suss out who you talk to? How can people be a better ally and let people that are questioning or need someone to reach out to, let that be known?
Yeah. I mean, well, part of it, that's why I do this, right? Is because like the fact that this is out there makes me a public person, and like people just find me, right? Parents find me. Parents of trans kids cold email me and cold like message me on Facebook, right, about their trans kids because they need help. And trans folk in the Army do the same thing because they're like, how do I start this? So I think some of it's just being involved in conversations like this and being public about it. And then the other thing that I tell command all the time is, if you are supportive of this, you have to assume that nobody knows that you're supportive.
Ah, okay.
Because if you don't say anything, everyone will assume that you're not safe.
Yeah.
You have to prove to me or show to me that you're safe. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that, right? Because there are folks who are safe who don't really have a clue about being trans or being queer. They're just a safe person, right? So you can be a person who just handles people gently. Jesus. And that's enough. If you handle people as people and gently, like that's a pretty good indicator that like I could come tell you something real hard and you're going to be good to me. You might not know how to help me, but you're going to be good to me. Right? Like, yeah. Right.
Just
like you all know.
Like a piece of rope in a storm. Just like I have this piece of rope. You're just this piece of rope. I can hold on to you. You're going to keep me here. And
like, that's maybe not the most you could do, but kind of the bare minimum is to just like, in your organization, and any organization there is, in your network of people, in your network of friends, who you could go say something to and be safe, right? Right now, right? Like, who those people are. It doesn't matter what the thing is that you said, it would be safe. Right? And who's not.
Speaking of safety, I never dove into this. I've been diving into this since we've been talking, but that in 2022, at least 31.
Yeah.
At least because they go unreported. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Well, and so this is right. This is the other piece of this for me, is to say that like, much like, I don't understand what it is like to be afraid of the police, right? I just haven't been that way. My little brother talks about getting pulled over going however fast he was going on the back roads in Texas and just being like in the middle of the night on his way back from college and just being like, whatever. Like there's, right. The assumption is that we're going to be fine.
I got my G 2 days after I got.
That's accurate. The assumption is it's going to be okay.
Because it's probably going to be okay. I have a little bit more like nerve about it now being trans, but like even now it's still like, it's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that is not true for Black folks because I've started listening to that story, to their stories over and over again, and didn't realize how much I didn't know. And in the same way, there's this like, nobody's going through transition to get some kind of benefit, because do you want to know what's a real pain in the ass? Having to think about the bathroom anytime you leave the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like,
That's
I have to think about it.
but you look like a woman. I'm not even bullshitting you. Like you look
Well,
like
she
a
is.
woman.
She is a
You,
woman.
I mean, I'm saying like if we had to like personify whatever that was,
It doesn't
you know,
matter
in
though.
a being,
It shouldn't.
like, I mean, I agree with you, but I'm saying why are people even asking this fucking question? Like, just
it's the point isn't that somebody's asking. The point is that I have to think about it. Right? You shouldn't have to think about driving in any neighborhood anywhere in the world, anywhere in this country, right? In any kind of, you shouldn't have to. You do.
No one should.
But you shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing. And you think about it when you leave the house, right?
you know why people have made such a huge like uproar about like, oh, I don't know why this trans person is going to this bathroom now. The reason why people have got up in arms about that, and I was reading about it about a week ago, is that just because of outliers, and there's so few outliers than there are people that are doing it for the right reasons.
I
Like,
think that's giving people entirely too much credit, man.
no, what I'm saying
I
is
think people are concerned about that and finding outliers to be intentionally cruel.
that too, because religion plays a big part in that,
Not
especially
even religion, just to be cruel, man.
Yeah, true.
There are
True.
a lot more straight men that have assaulted women in restrooms than there are trans women who have assaulted people in restrooms. It's just
I believe you. I 100% believe you. I'm saying
I don't know of anyone who has right. I don't know.
No one's ever been like,
trans
I'm going
women.
to assault someone. Oh wait, the gender sign on that bathroom's wrong. I'll wait here.
Every like news story you hear is to the extreme far right or left. Where's the honesty? Like, where people choose to get the information is they try to like stay in their own little glass box where they can hear their own echoes in their echo chambers. And that's the issue. Like, people, I guarantee you, if we took somebody that was super ultra conservative or had all these problems with like transgender, gay people, whatever, if they sat down and had a conversation with you, it would change their perspective on you and your people and their like perspective towards it, because it's not fair.
You would hope.
I hope that.
I mean, but I'm a logic. Is it because we're educated? Is that it? Is that the only reason why?
No, I mean,
I'm not educated. I graduated high school, bro.
No, that's a loaded term. I said it that way for it. I didn't say college degree. I said educated.
I think that is why I do this, because that's why I choose to be out and open in the world, is because I believe that when we meet people, it changes our minds about them, because suddenly the stereotype isn't a stereotype, it's a human being. Right. And there are some things that are true about stereotypes, right? Like, there are fucking unicorns all over my house, right? Because that's me, unicorns and rainbows. Like, I love that.
You just like unicorns and rainbows.
Right. Exactly.
All I'm going to chalk it up to. I don't really give a shit about the back reason. You can have a dick hanging on your wall. I'd be like, you're just a dick person. That's cool.
But like, they're unicorns and rainbows, dude. They're awesome.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like, there's some stereotypical that being associated with the queer community. Like, we don't own the rainbow, but we do love the rainbow.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I think that, like, having conversations is what matters. Like, the being vulnerable, being authentic, I think is really what does change people.
We had a episode yesterday with the guy, the Banff Hammer dude.
I watched that.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
It was pretty awesome. He would be like, I think he would like love to talk to you. Like, he would love to, because he's been preaching the mental health aspect of fitness in itself, and realizing that you just don't get fit and strong by just being on testosterone or not. He was like, it doesn't fucking matter. It's like Matt Frazier was clean all those years and he still beats shit out of people. So what is your argument? And I say that all the time. Like, what is the argument? Like, honestly.
I'll talk to anybody. I'll come back.
Yeah, Liv's still friends with me, man.
Promise?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you mean she's still friends with you, John? What did you do?
What's that?
John didn't do anything. John's great.
What did you do?
John's a little crazy.
I accuse you of something. No, but people need to have these open and honest conversations. Like I can put out the way I feel about things, or like I don't even say feeling anymore. I say my observations, because then observations are rooted in reality, and then I can just kind of make a discerned opinion off of that, because this is an observation. This is what an observation is in a statistical study. I try to live my life as like objectively as possible and go, hey, this is what's going on. This is This is what's going on. This is what's not going on. So when I'm able to do that, I can kind of form an opinion about who a person is to an accurate degree, just what that person presents to me. Like, I don't care, Liv, that you are transgender or anything like that. You're just a good person. Like, that's it. That's all I give a fuck about. I do not care about anything else to the opposite end, you know?
Yeah.
I generally try my best to let people tell me who they are.
I would say I want it to matter to you. I want it to matter to you that I'm trans, though, because I need it to matter.
Oh, because for protection, kind of, in a way, or
because how you vote matters, right? Because how you exist in the world matters, right? To me, it's the same way of like, it is important that I recognize what being Black means in this country.
Oh yeah,
right. To be like, I don't see color. Like, okay, that's fucked up.
Yeah,
right? Because your life is not the same as mine.
Yeah.
Right? Because there is a difference because of a whole shitload of things, right? And to say, oh, I just don't see that, to me, negates a whole piece of who you are, because you don't get to exist outside of your body.
That's
right?
true.
Like, you don't get to exist outside of the color of your skin. I don't get to exist outside of my transness.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that there is this ideal that we have that, like, oh, I don't care if you're this or that or the other. Like, yeah, I don't care if you're Black, but to not acknowledge your Blackness or
I'll acknowledge it. Like, I'll acknowledge the fact.
No, for me not to.
Oh.
Right. No, for me to not acknowledge your Blackness is to miss a whole part of who you are. For me not to acknowledge you being Chinese is to miss a whole part of who you are. And it may not be the thing that, like, I don't have to go talk about being Chinese or being Black or being trans, right? Like, I can talk about weightlifting. I can talk about working on motorcycles. Like, those are things that I care about the most.
Wait, you have a motorcycle?
I have two.
What kind?
The one I'm riding right now is a 2016 Harley Dyna Lowrider S. My little brother has my other bike. Yeah, I have my little brother has my little Honda Sport bike until he buys his own. So
I'm curious to see how long you can live in Texas and not get a truck.
Yeah.
I mean, I put a tow hitch on my Subaru to tow my motorcycle out to Fort Belvoir. So far I'm good.
Yeah.
I just don't like driving big vehicles. So,
dude, driving my food truck is it feels like I'm driving an LMTV. I'm just like, oh God.
I saw it for the first time last night. I saw your truck and I was like, that is massive.
Dude, makes sense. Like, I would have given you a tour, man. It's awesome.
No, you had the baby.
It's a 22-foot truck.
Yeah.
It is a big boy.
I can't wait.
But like cornering on that thing, I'm like,
ooh, you're like, I'm gonna flip, aren't I?
Seriously, it's like an LMTV or a freaking deuce and a half, because that's how old I am.
Oh yeah, we had some of those in our motor pool that broke at Fort Raleigh. It's just, they were terrible. They wouldn't even start. But yeah, Liv, go ahead.
I am coming up on my time to turn into a pumpkin.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah. So, in closing, Liv, it is important to me who you are. Every aspect, just as important to me who Ken is and everyone else is. And thank you so much for coming on. And I'll see you guys later.
Okay.
Next time you see Stacy, tell her I say hi.
I will, for sure.
All right. Bye, friends.
Bye.
Stay, Liv.
I'll stay for a sec. Yeah.
Okay. Give me 5 minutes. I want you to just try to guide me through another question. So, being a woman now, I should say being a woman, what have you experienced any of the like harassment and things, that kind of is tied to being the gender?
Yeah. I mean, the cat calls that you get that like happen, that's a real thing. I don't open, Instagram has this fancy feature now where if people message you and they're not on your contacts list, they blur the pictures. So I have not chosen to dive into what I suspect is in those messages. Right?
You're getting the eggplants. You're getting the evaluations of eggplants.
Right? Like I assume what is in there, and I choose not to discover that. I don't need that in my life. So yeah, I mean, I think there is all of that. I think it's different than it is for other people to some extent, right? Like I walk through the world as a 6'2" chick who's pretty strongly built, so people look at me differently and feel differently about me, and then potentially leave me alone in ways that, right? I don't actually really think about walking anywhere at night still. Maybe that's
still
just
not a, yeah.
I don't think about it. And maybe that's because of being raised as a dude. Maybe that's because of, walking through the woods at night often enough at, Ibolic or Ranger School or whatever, that you just like, you kind of become friends with the night to some extent.
Yeah, you're like, whatever's in there can have me at that point, or I'm gonna
right.
One of us is dying. It's cool.
Right. One of us is dying, and it's not going to be me. So, and I've talked to my cis female peers who, generally speaking, don't have that same perspective. They're like, that's not the world I live in. I live in a world where I am constantly aware of, and I don't do that. I don't run at night. I don't walk at night. I don't do these things because it is much scarier and riskier. And generally people have left me alone. I have not had a bad experience. That doesn't mean that I won't, but I haven't. So I think there's, again, is that an advantage? I don't know. Is it a disadvantage? I don't know. Right. Like,
I think disadvantage. Don't.
Well, so there's, it's harder to find shoes in this size. It's harder to find clothes. It's harder to, there are not a lot of 6'2" chicks that can lift the weight I lift or that look the way I look. And so, you say like, you look like a woman. And like, I think some days I feel like I pass pretty well. And other days it's like, okay, yeah, but like you see me out in public and you're like, nah, you're like way different than average. Right? Like you just are.
Yeah.
Right? You're different than average too.
Yeah, I feel like wait, what does that mean?
You're different from, I think you're different from the average population as well.
No, I'm not. I was talking about how big I am, or like,
yeah,
big.
That's what I'm saying.
But that's the thing. I don't think I'm a big person. I really don't. I feel so
right
tiny.
because you have to live in your body and cope with that, and like you're not as big as you want to be.
No. I don't want to be any bigger. I want to lose weight. I'm 231 pounds. Fuck.
Okay.
So bad. Running these thighs, I go through leggings like a motherfucker, Liv. Like I go through. Under Armour should have an account designated for me, because this is my 8th pair.
Jeez.
In 3 months.
That's too much. Altogether, too many leggings.
And they're not cheap, so I feel for you ladies that have to that wear them as like regular clothes and you go out, and I'm like, oh, shits are like $80 for you guys because they know you're gonna buy more of them. Yeah. But no, that's wild. I don't. No, it's kind of different, because the first time I saw you out, you were in the gym, you were lifting, and I was like, oh, okay, someone's lifting. And then I looked back again, I was like, that's a lady. That's a very strong lady. And then I looked some more, and then someone told me something. They were like, no, I think she's transgender. I looked and I was like, oh, okay. Someone had to point it out to me. So you passed pretty well, Liv.
Well, I'll take it.
Yeah. I'm like, I was thinking you go into a story of like, sadly enough, like being harassed. Someone just walks behind you, just grabs a handful of butt. That's all I ever think about.
That has happened too, but...
Wait, what the fuck? Really?
All of the stories that you have heard about how the women get treated are true.
That's fucking crazy.
They're all true.
What is your reaction usually?
Mostly I keep walking.
It's just...
So here's another example of maybe not privilege, but just how people interact differently in the world, right?
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other night, and she was like, oh no, I would just rage at somebody. And I'm like, yeah, you're 5'2". Yeah. You can rage at somebody because you're not threatening. If I rage at somebody, that's a different thing that happens. I can't express anger in the world the way that you can express anger because of the body that I exist in. Right.
Same.
Right. You can't either.
Can't do it. Someone
can't do it.
one kid called my kid the N-word at school like a week ago, and I walked in there and I realized when I was in there that I was raising my voice and I
Yeah.
had to calm the fuck down
Yeah. Right.
because yeah,
Because you're you.
yeah,
Right.
because I'm me, and I was like, that's not fucking fair. I can't even express my emotions in a
No,
place.
because it won't be effective. People will get scared. People will act the fool. Right. There's all sorts of bad things happen if you do that. And is that fair? No, you should absolutely be allowed to express to express your emotion, and that should be a normal, healthy part of life. And you can't.
Yeah, I can't do it. I can't.
Can't do it.
Like I when I go to places, I kind of wait until someone talks to me.
Yep.
That's one of those things. I just wait. I don't just go up and talk to people, because if I tap a lady on the shoulder, or like
Yeah.
even when I was out dating, I would
Yeah.
like, I'm like, maybe a little
Right.
sketched out.
Right. Because you exist in the world in a way that other people don't. And so the same rules don't apply. And it might be fine, but the problem is if it's not, it's really not. Right.
Yeah, I'm fucked. Yeah, I'm
right.
going. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
That's wild. This is okay. Now I'm drawing parallels, and it makes sense, and a lot more makes sense every time I have one of these conversations with somebody that's in a smaller group, ethnically or like sexually or based on gender or just sexual orientation. Like something else gets figured out in my brain, and I go, that makes sense. And you guys I learn off of metaphors, or similes, and you say those things, and I'm like, oh.
I've learned a lot from reading what Black women write.
Yeah.
Right? Because they've been struggling a lot longer than I have.
Hard. It's bad.
Right?
Yeah.
And I've whoa, people have been at this struggle for identity and freedom and value as a human being for a long time.
Long time. Yeah, it's kind of wild. I don't know. We got to have you back on. Next time Steve will be on, and you'll get more conversation. Funny enough, Steve was a medic, and he did work in the hospital at the same time you worked in the hospital. I think he
that's
knows.
funny.
Yeah.
Probably.
He was just a medic. He's enlisted. He just made 6. He's about to have a baby.
Medics are the greatest. Love them.
Exactly. Yeah, medic helped me with a lot. Yeah. Now I'm gonna keep that story to myself. But but yeah, dude, it's awesome having you on here, Liv. Anytime you feel like you want to hop back on and just talk and have a conversation, if something in the news pops up and you're like, we should fucking talk about that, dude.
Okay.
Come on over.
I'll let you know.
Have so much free ad space. Those guys in the upper right hand corner, they pay for all of these things. So
okay. Awesome. That's great.
It's awesome talking to you. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.
You.
You too. I will. Yeah.
All right. Bye.